Hey everybody, welcome back. I got Jonas Neihoff here with me. Jonas, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Very good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. It's exciting to be able to sit down here and get to do this with you. You're someone who I greatly admire and I really look up to, man, because we were talking about just a couple days ago about kind of grew up around you a little bit, with life groups at your house and just kind of
Yeah, your
seeing your
parents and
fire
just
kind of
ways.
begin, at Faith Center. Like, I know you've been coming for a long time, but how did you even hear about Faith Center?
I actually heard about Face Center. I always joke and say it was from a rumor. So it was someone had been going to. I was freshly saved and in the college class at Heartland, and someone had said that John was over there teaching people how to handle snakes. And I was so naive. I was like, I got to see this. So I went literally out of curiosity because of that. There's no joke. So that's how
That's
I ended up
hilarious.
going to Faith Center and got over there. And John was preaching, and he was just had such a passion and heart, and it was just contagious. And it was like, I want to hear more what this guy has to say, and kind of the rest of that's history. Just got to know him, love him dearly. I mean, he's been really a just a absolute, probably the one of the top influences in my life, and helping me and encouraging me, and as I was kind of developing, and as the physical man I am, still the childish man I am in my mind, but
Yeah, I mean, I just think back, and I told Brandon this a little bit whenever I had him on, just those years of worship where you guys were up there, and it was so influential to me just to see how freely you guys worshiped and how contagious the worship was. You guys were playing like your own music. It was
yeah, a
just
lot of
like so real and raw, and in that season, it was just so there was so much passion to it. And I really do like look back on those times fondly.
Oh, it was a sweet time, and really to a point to where there's almost like kind of years and times and seasons where I'd almost want to try to chase that and try to recreate it, and because you want to go back to it, and it's just there's no recreating it. It's just one of those things that you just feel blessed enough to be a part of and get to enjoy at the time. Faith Center was really growing. We were at the Carson Center, and lives were being changed, and as a fresh new believer, being able to be trusted by John and have the freedom to go and lead God's people in worship was pretty exciting. And it was just there was a chemistry there with all of us that it was just a special time, and love it and grateful for every moment of it.
What was it like a little bit behind the scenes with you guys? Because you could feel the chemistry just from being in the room. What was it like when you guys got together and just played whenever there was nobody around?
It was even better. I mean, it was just such an authentic friendship, and there was just laughter. I mean, laugh until your belly hurt. We just always just had such a good time and joking and just enjoying each other's company. And so it was really a great time all together. Just getting the families together and just fun. Like I said, it was just there was such a joy in in the service. It really was. It was pretty awesome.
So a little tidbit I picked up just a week ago when we were playing worship together was that you were homeschooled until you were like eighth grade or sixth grade, somewhere in
Yeah,
there.
eighth
Eighth
grade.
grade.
So, if kind of talking about story, I know that that's kind of the theme typically is a little bit of people's story and their testimony. But my parents, kind of if you go back a few generations, my mom's one of 13 kids, my dad's one of six. And they were both pretty wild, had some just things in their own life that they had really gone through, some pretty intense stuff, kind of grew up in different environments, and my dad, his father, kind of if you look at kind of where faith kind of began in our family, really at personal relationship with God. They're both big Roman Catholic families, and kind of grew up in that type of church. But my grandfather had was working at TVA, and a boiler had blown up on him, and it burnt 60% of his body. And so he was laid up in bed, and in that he had started reading his Bible, and he started realizing that you could have this personal relationship with God, that it didn't have to go through a priest. And so he began kind of this really radical turn. And this was kind of through the lens and story that my dad had told me, because I never knew him. But he had got to this place where he started doing some pretty extreme things. So he went on like a 40-day fast, and he was this big guy. He was, described as just kind of intense and angry. And then whenever God got a hold of him, my dad said it was literally like a lion to a lamb. He just was very calm and gracious, and to the point to where he went on this 40-day fast. He was standing up in the middle of some of these services, and he started preaching the gospel, and left. He kind of really was big into eschatology and felt like the end of the world was coming, and left his job, and they ended up putting my grandfather in 2 North. They thought he had gone crazy, and so they started giving him shock treatments and trying to get him to kind of come out of this, wildness. And there was mixed stories. I mean, I don't know exactly, what was all fully going on, how much of it was God, how much of it was, was craziness and some mental illness that was maybe going on in that. But when he got out of the hospital, he had really became kind of a hermit, and then he started drinking again, and he felt like he had really failed God. And so in that, one day he wrote a note and went out and he took his life and shot himself. And what that did to my family was it really kind of turned half of them to God. Some of them felt like the world had kind of done this to their father, and half of them kind of felt like God had done this, religion had done this to their father. And so my dad was kind of in the camp where he really felt the passion for God and got saved himself. He was a heroin addict and was radically saved, married my mom, and they got involved in a church which now was actually a cult back then, but it was called Maranatha. Okay. And Maranatha was this big movement among young adults. And so they actually moved to Houston, Texas, with that youth movement or that young adult movement. Mm-hmm. So that's how we ended up in Houston, which is where I was born. Okay. And so my dad was very much, again, on the eschatology, withdrawal from the world, the ends coming, separate. I didn't have a Social Security number until I was 14 years old. He went off-grid, no checking account, no nothing. Mm-hmm. We got 5 brothers and sisters. None of us have Social Security numbers. Or we didn't until we moved back here. So we were homeschooled. That whole movement imploded. It was very, controlling and got really, bizarre, and they got real, kind of top heavy with greed and everything else. Mm-hmm. So we ended up in another church, Gulfway Baptist. That was kind of where I grew up. And that church, I had met a lot of friends, but I was the weird homeschool kid. So I loved God, was really always passionate about the Bible and spoke up in class and everything else. But I was just this annoying little redheaded kid that just, was too zealous probably at the time. And so that experience for me wasn't great. It was like there was some kids there that was constantly like making my life miserable. And then I had my youth pastors. The first one left his wife for a lady at camp, and it caused a big, scandal in the church, and everybody was kind of upset. And then they brought in another guy that was our youth pastor, and he was just kind of odd and weird. There was just something about him, and 6 months into that, he got brought up on charges of molesting his daughters and got outed out of the church as well. So that was all happening about the time when I was about 14. So that was kind of when, and my mom and dad decided they were going to move back to Paducah to be closer to their family. And this was where, all their family was originally from. So that's what brought us here, brought us back to Paducah. And needless to say, no one was itching to get back in church. We had just gone out of a really messy situation. Yeah. All that's being said, my parents, still loved God and still, preached and shared and encouraged those things with myself and my 5 brothers and sisters. Mm-hmm. But we didn't really get back to church. And slowly, old friends, family, everybody started kind of drinking again, partying and doing the things. And I kind of carried suit. There was some turmoil in our family, and at 16, you know, I had really kind of felt a lot of this pain from, you know, from some things that had kind of happened, and I remember just driving down the road, and I knew there was a God, but I remember telling God, I said, God, I know you exist. I know you're real. Like, I can't deny your creation all around me. I was like, but I don't want anything to do with you. I don't want your spirit. I don't want to feel bad for anything. I want to be able to do whatever I want to do. And I don't want you in my life. I just don't want you. And it was almost, the only way I can describe it is almost like the opposite of a confession of faith. It was like, I don't want you. And my bitterness and my anger at that time was just peaked. And so from about 16 to 21 years old, 22.
Do you remember feeling anything in that moment whenever you,
Oh, yeah.
were you just like rage and like,
Yeah, and it was almost like I just almost felt like his presence just left. Like it was like God was just this gentleman that was just like, I'm not going to force myself into your life. Like, and I felt like he was always kind of there watching over me. And there was multiple times where, you know, that absolutely God was watching over me.
yeah.
But, you know, long story short, those 6 years, I pushed everything to the max. I mean, I just was, you know, had every addiction you could imagine, and was living as wild and reckless as I possibly could. And at about 22, I realized I really had, you know, was on a destructive path. I knew I was going to, you know, really either die, get a, you know, all the cliche things. You're either going to end up dead or in jail. I mean, that was the path I was really on. And I had zero respect for God or the Word or anything else. But my mom had left a Bible on my nightstand, and I was doing a lot of cocaine at that time. And I would read the Bible just to mock it and like to bore myself to sleep when I'd be coked out at night. And I'd be like, look at that contradiction, and look at this, and look at that, and but it felt like God was really working on me, and through that, like even though I had this, you know, this lack of reverence towards it, it was the Word was kind of getting me, and I was gaining understanding as an adult of the beauty of the gospel, that it's not this religious do's and don'ts, good and bad, this and that, and that it really is this gospel. And I remember the day I told God, I finally kind of had come to my wits end, and told God, I said, look, if I got to get myself right before I come to you, you might as well just kill me now and just send me to hell. Like, there's no way I can change. I said, but if you'll take me the way I am, I'm yours. And I felt God's presence like nothing I'd ever experienced before in my life. Like, and it brought me on my face, and I just wept and wept and wept. And I felt all this bitterness and anger and resentment and all the things that were really the root of why I was chasing some of the addictions and some of the things that I was doing. It was, you know, it was really just rooted in trying to process through my anger and my bitterness and the hurt that I'd felt. And God just began to just transform my life. And that's when I got connected at Heartland. And just some amazing memories, amazing people over there that really encouraged me. And God was doing something in that college group that was just unbelievable. I mean, it just continued to grow. And that's when I kind of heard about John, like I was telling you. And just, I was just curious. I had no idea denominations. I didn't understand any of that. I just wanted to be in the presence of God and just understand more about this person who loved me as just a mess and would accept me the way I was and just pour his love and favor out on me. And in that year that followed, I always thought it was interesting because for 6 years, you know, and they say in the Bible, 6 is the number of man. I did it man's way. I did it my way.
Yeah.
And I destroyed my life. I had nothing. I had no money in the bank account, no vehicle, no place to live. I'd burn every bridge relationship that I could had. And in 1 year, I met Shelly, bought our first house, a vehicle that was practically given to me. Got started a painting business, first LLC I'd kind of set up, and and found out we were having our first kid, got married, and had our first kid in 1 year. So
Wow.
1 year, everything that I had destroyed, God turned around and in 1 year restored everything I lost and gave me an abundance more. So
Yeah.
it just kind of in that 7th year, just God's favor. It was just really cool to see how quickly He can turn someone's life around and take what maybe they feel is hopeless and they'll never dig themselves out of a hole and be able to change it. And from then, God's just continued to just grow our lives and everything else. So it's been it's funny. I hadn't shared my testimony in a long time, so it's if kind of good to sometimes go back and remember how good God is and how it all kind of started.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to like reflect back and think back to those times because you're a totally different person. In those 6 years, it's like a totally different person. When you think back about those decisions, those emotions, the things, feeling that, it makes sense because you lived it. But at the same time, it's like, why was I doing that? Like, I just don't. But hurt can go a long way. The one thing I really, really think is very interesting is how real you were with God from the get-go, whether it was like I'm all for it or I'm all against it, like that real conversation with God. And like, Lord, like I might as well die and go to hell if you're not gonna like meet me where I'm at, like find me, Lord. Like I don't know, like I feel like sometimes I miss out on some of that. I feel like I could be more real and raw because like you read the word and like there's a lot of people who God's so gracious to like listen to us even whenever we're ignorant of what He's doing in our lives.
Yeah, and I think that growing up kind of a child in the 90s, like, so you kind of came out of this 80s and there was this revolution of music, and I love 90s music. And one of the reasons, Nirvana and Pearl Jam, Stone Temple Pilots, and some of these bands that had come out was there was just all this very raw and authentic sound that was coming up. And that always resonated with me because I feel like there was so much, that was when all of this stuff was going on. The Gulf War had started, and there was, weapons of mass destruction, and you had Bill Clinton and George Bush and all these different presidents kind of that I grew up with. And it always felt like there was just lies, just everywhere. There was just lies, and it just was insulting to your intelligence that everybody kind of acted like you were just, you're just stupid enough to believe all of the crap that they were, putting out. And so there's always been just a desire in me. I want that authentic, transparent, even if it's messy. I just want it to be real. I want it to be authentic. And I don't, and I feel like God's like that with us. Like, we're not fooling Him. It's not like, like we can pretend like it is, but He knows exactly what's going on. So what does it matter, to just be, fake if it's much more satisfying in life to just kind of try to be as authentic as you can. So I always try to do that, and everybody has their walls they put up, and I do too. You have those, personas that you just try to, hide behind sometimes, but the closer you can get to that authentic, I do feel like God's in that. I feel like He is.
Yeah, like the more I'm authentic with Him by myself, the easier it will be to be authentic about Him whenever I'm out in public. I won't like be faking the Jesus stuff. I won't be just praying a big prayer just to look like I know how to pray. Like it will be more authentic the more time I'm genuine with Him. That relationship will show itself, and we both know people who show that on like a daily basis. Like they live for the Lord, and there isn't anything fake about it. But man, politics has been fake forever, and even in the past 5-6 years, it's been way more of a revelation for me in my life. Just to like how much, I mean, the world's just so full of lies. You know what I mean?
People, I think can appreciate that when you're just kind of real. But it was interesting. We were at Faith Center 10 years or more, ended up coming on staff, and we left there about the time I'd started Socially Present, and it really was kind of burnt out on church. I'd been going really hard. There was just some tough things we were kind of working through and processed through. Ended up in a house church with just some really precious people. Darren and Joy Lampley, this a couple that led it, Bo and Carol Bell, some other just absolute brothers and sisters and just like-minded. They were our tribe for sure.
Yeah.
And, we would go have a beer. We would talk about God. We'd grill out. They'd smoke cigars on their back porch. Everybody was kind of in that. That was kind of when all that was, the craft beer was like the cool thing to do in church, apparently. But it was funny, like when you get into church, you start to get this this feeling like you've got to just be perfect, and you end up in this place where you're worried about who's going to know if I drank a beer or did this or said that or whatever, and you get real people pleasing and worried about what everybody else thinks about you.
Yeah.
And when I finally just got to the point where I was like, I don't care what anybody thinks about me. Like, I'm not perfect by any means, and I don't want to glorify things that are maybe cause other people to struggle, but I just am who I am. Mm-hmm. And when I quit caring what church people thought is when I actually opened up more and shared the gospel more with people who maybe hadn't heard of the good news of Jesus Christ. I wasn't afraid to do it anymore because it almost like it broke when I quit caring about what the church people think and care what anybody else thought. I just was like,
right.
This is who I am, and faith and who God is a big part of that. And so I think that's a struggle a lot of people have and wrestle with, and it's just, I don't know. It's I get fatigued with all that. I don't care. I just don't care anymore. I really don't. Like, I just am who I am,
Well, it's like we can't transform from the outside, and, we got to transform from the inside out. So if I'm constantly worried about this outside persona of what people think, and we do put a stigma with people at church, we just feel like there's more pressure to please them, to make sure that they like us for some reason. I have issues with that kind of stuff to this day, of where I worry about what people think, but really it is good to remind ourselves it's not about what they think. Who are we trying to please with our actions, with our thoughts, with the way we do life? Like, is it pleasing to the Lord? And are there things I could work on? 100%. For me, I can't just have a beer. I had 8 years of alcoholism. So for me, I know I couldn't go to a place and have a beer and a cigar and talk about Jesus. I've had plenty of alcohol and talked about Jesus, and it was never it was never really good because I was drunk. Just me and Zach would just be talking about God. But it's just one of those things that you have to walk it out with Him, know what your limitations are, and not be so worried about what other people think about what you do and say. How public is your life, and how public do you want your life to be? Because a lot of it's probably not meant for everyone to know. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's those close friends that you can have church with, that live life with, where it's it's okay to, open up.
Right.
And so not everyone at church should really know 100% of everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And social media, kind of growing alongside it, I think that's made everyone's life a little more public, and
100%.
Just adds to that pressure. You see it in society. Everybody's trying to kind of put a character out there, a persona that's who I am, and they're just kind of guided by that. So it's just it is difficult and it's tough. My kids are grown up in it more. I mean, I was kind of on the very beginning of a millennial, I guess, as of 82. So whatever, I think they call it exennials or something like that, whatever it is. But that, we grew up without it, and then it came, and I'm glad there wasn't cameras all the way around when I was younger. I would have been canceled a long time ago, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, but there was, I don't know. I mean, I don't do it perfect. And I think there is definitely a balance. You're trying to love people and not be a stumbling block, but you're not, trying to be something you're not. You just are who you are, and that's just the way to go. So
I want to backtrack a little bit to you meeting Shelly. How did y'all meet?
It was at Heartland's college group. So
okay, so she was in it too, kind of thing.
She was, yeah. And then so she started coming to Faith Center whenever I started kind of going over there, and then we did a young adult group there, and then we dated for 3 months, and I asked her to marry me.
Wow.
And then 6 months later, we got married. And then Ben came 10 months later. Everybody was counting, in the church. They thought that we rushed it because she was pregnant or something. Luckily, it was 10 months after we got married.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it all happened super quick. And, we were, I was 23 or 24, I think. when I got married, and just, it's been nonstop. I mean, then 2 years later, Eden came. 2 years after that, Macy came. It was just a lot quick. And Ben just graduated, so
that's crazy.
It's insane, yeah.
So you were painting, you were just kind of forming your own business, and everything was going pretty well, right?
Yeah, so I didn't on the business side. I had my dad's a painter, and so that's what I kind of grew up around. My dad painted houses, and so when I was old enough to kind of go to college, I went to WKCTC, and I was trying to pay my way through. And my parents didn't have a lot of money; they had 6 kids, but they did raises to work hard and do good in school and try to make a go of it. And so I went to school. I wanted to always be an architect, but when I saw how much school and money it took to get there, really kind of deterred me from that. But I went to school for business because I wasn't really sure which direction I wanted to go, and I wanted something that would kind of make me well-rounded. And part of what drove that and the entrepreneurship that's kind of been my life, I've always kind of, other than it's about 4 years, always worked for myself and had stuff of my own, that I worked on. Was my dad was an inventor. I mean, he had so many good ideas and things that he had developed ideas for how to launch it, and it would always kind of get to the point he'd build little prototypes and things like that, but none of them ended up hitting market or going out because he just struggled with understanding, didn't have the experience of how do I make a business and monetize this. And so that always bothered me because I'd see the disappointment and a lot of respect for him and wanted to understand, like, if I want to do this, how do I turn it into a business model and put processes around it to where I can actually start something and do it. So that's kind of what drove me into business.
Your dad's like a fascinating guy.
Yeah,
he's like it sounds like you had a lot of creativity in your family. You know what I mean?
Yeah, him and my mom both. Dad was songwriter. I mean, artist. He's a visual artist. He can, really talented guy. I mean, always had some good creative ideas, and you'd always go to him and you'd be wrestling with A or B, thinking this or what do I do this, and he'd just hit you with, have you thought about C, kind of thing.
Yeah.
He always had that unique perspective on problem solving and things like that. So there was a lot of that really would go to him, and when I wanted a good, fresh perspective, honest, authentic, feedback. So,
and music's just always been a part of y'all's life then.
Well, Dad always did. I didn't start playing music. I kind of dabbled with a little bit, but we had built this ramp when I was 18 years old, this bike ramp, and we would launch it out into Kentucky Lake. So we put it at the bottom. We were partying, and we'd ride these bikes, shoot them out like 40 foot out in the Kentucky Lake, and the chain broke while I was going down, and so I'm left-handed, and I fell and I broke the bones in the back of my hand. It ripped my fingers, so I looked like a Ninja Turtle for a little while. I was running like this. And when these fingers wouldn't work, so someone suggested playing guitar or bass to rehabilitate it. And I always was a visual artist. In school, I always loved drawing and painting and anything like that. That was kind of my creative outlet. And whenever I started playing music, I just fell in love with it. And like a month after learning how to play bass, some friends of mine, Tyler and Chad, we started this band, 454, and I had no idea how to play anything, but I was their bass player, and it was so bad. And so I fell in love with that, and that's how I kind of got started. So I didn't start playing until I was 18 years old, and I play right-handed. Because even though I'm left-handed, because of that, I was trying to get my hand kind of rehabbed.
So when did you decide to start Socially Present? And I know it was kind of like I've heard you tell a little bit of the testimony of how like it was kind of like a real struggle because you had a kid, right?
All 3.
You had
all 3.
Yeah, and so it was kind of like I don't know. I've heard you say it either at Face Center or somewhere where you guys were like basically like waiting for like hoping a check would show up in the mail. Like it was like getting real tight and stuff. What was that season like?
No, it was It was kind of grew my faith probably more than any other season or any year that I had. But when I went to work at Faith Center, Tim Batts was the media director, and I shared office with him, and I started doing some graphics and trying to help with some of the covers and help him where I could. And him and I became really good friends, and he did a lot of video production, and I was kind of doing some of the graphic stuff and social media stuff and some of the website things we were kind of working on, and I really enjoyed it. It was like a good creative outlet. So at church you typically wear multiple hats. You're doing youth and you're doing worship, and you're doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And more on the belief side and confidence side, that was a season where the church was really just tapping into this thing of identity and who we are and who God created us to be. And there was a lot of sermons and messages and speakers that just really struck a chord and gave me a lot of confidence in that, that God, you can do anything and you can do big things with God. You can step out and try them. So during that, season, Sam calls it stupid confidence. My brother, he's always, because he's like, you get to this point where you're just like, I can take on the world, like what can I not do with God? Like you kind of, and it kind of, got to that point where social media was just kind of kicking out, and I had gone to this thing called Catalyst. It was this big conference, and I'd heard this speaker, Blake Makowski, wrote this book, Start Something That Matters. And he's the one who started Tom's Shoe Company. And so ironically, I had wrote in my journal or my notes the day before, start something that matters. And then this guy comes out and speaks about this for-profit model and how it can make a difference and those types of things. And so when he came out, his book was Start Something That Matters. It was the exact thing that I'd already written down the day before. So I grabbed the book, read it, and it was really kind of inspired me to start something. And so Socially Present was that thing of, okay, we'll help with getting people on social media, but also be present and try to make a difference in society and help nonprofits and help those. And so it's really kind of where it started. And our first office there was Starfish Orphan Ministry down on Broadway. And Tim and I stepped out and we started, shooting videos and doing social media and graphics. And I was terrible at it. Like Shelly, when I told Shelly I was going to start the company, I was like, I'm going to start a digital marketing agency, I think. She was like, you don't even know how to send an email hardly. And I was like, I'll figure it out. And I was pretty ignorant on that. So anyway, that first year was a struggle. I mean, I made $26,000, and that was a family of 5. And so we had burned through our savings. I'd gotten to a point where I was so stressed out, I was passing out. And so I actually had blood had rushed to my head one day, and I fell and hit my head in the hallway, and got up, and the stress of it was, I just was sitting there thinking, man, I am a failure as a father and as a provider, and what have I done, And I just continued to have made less and less money up to that point. I mean, that was how when I left the construction business, because we were doing painting and trim carpentry before I went to work at the church. And I thought, what was I thinking? So anyway, I took a step back that first year and felt God just say, listen, this isn't your business, this is my business. And I'm your provider. This is a family business. I'm the father. I'm the one who makes sure that you're taken care of, but you're responsible to just get up and do your chores. Get up and take each day. And I was reminded by God that, it's like for 30 years, I think I was 31 or I just turned 31 when this had happened. And felt like God had said, think about all the times you felt like this was it. Like this is it. You're never going to make it or whatever. And you've always had a roof over your head. You always had food in your stomach. You always had clothes on your back for 30 years. Like 30 years, he's been faithful. Like, so what makes you think he's not going to be faithful for another month? And that really settled it in my mind, like almost to the point of like I'm not saying that I've never had this doubt that God's going to provide, but it settled it pretty good. I mean, I was at a point where just like, you know what, God is always going to take care of us, and He always has and always will. And so it was a pretty defining moment in my. I'd say it's probably shaped me taking more risk, even more so as I've kind of gotten older in business.
Yeah, I mean, that is like one of the, I mean, there's certain things that everyone struggles with, like trusting God completely in, like whether it's your kids, whether it's finances, but finances, I would say, is like one of the hardest ones for people to like surrender. Like, okay, God, we say you are our provider, but do we really believe that? And sometimes it takes some seasons of being tested to really come to the realization of like, I mean, we're hurting, but I'm able to provide enough, and He's able to, like you said, provide a roof over our heads, so to speak. So I just had Jeff Constantine on, and he had a few years of being homeless, but they always had a home to go to. Like even whenever and this was a season where he was kind of like not following the Lord, but like he looks back now and realizes like we all realize that the Lord was with us even in those seasons, and like they always had a roof over their head, even whenever He wasn't able to provide them a home. God was helping them along the way.
Yeah,
and it's just one of those things. Like,
yeah, definitely.
I don't know. I just feel like people need to like trust the Lord, especially whenever He's called you to. Did you feel called to do that? Like you just felt
Oh,
like
definitely, yeah.
like God's called you to do that.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to business and entrepreneurship, I do feel that that's one of the things that God's called me to do, and I love to teach and kind of share. I've by no means made it some, I know some people that are just astronomically further along and better, and I love that mentorship though that they've given to me, and I love the marketplace, and I think that you know. For me, theology and the core of the gospel is in all that. And there is, when I really distill down like what I believe about the gospel and what my theology is, and I call it the garden. It's the garden mentality. Is that when you look at what Christ came to redeem, He was to get us back to the garden. So what was the original purpose of Adam and Eve? So Adam's here, he's communing, he's got this relationship, he's walking and talking with God in this paradise, in this garden that's got everything that you could imagine.